Okay, welcome to everybody that has joined our webinar tonight. If somebody could type into the chat that they can see and hear my voice and see the screen, I would appreciate that. One webinar we did found out that folks could not see the screen. So if somebody could type in the chat or the Q&A, and we will see that, and then we'll get started. I see James Rice has raised his hand. That might be a good sign. Okay, so thank you, Marshall. Appreciate that. The last webinar, the chat, people could not chat. So, but we do have a chat now.
Roger that.
So I think that's good. Okay, so tonight's webinar is inspection authorization renewal requirements and how to renew using IACRA. And it's presented to aviation technicians and especially IAs, just as a help for going through the renewal process. And I am Gary Mitchum. I'm the Airworthiness Fast Team Program Manager at San Antonio. I have with me tonight Ryan Newman, who is the Operations Fast Team Program Manager here. And we also have Daryl Hughes, who is the Airworthiness Fast Team Program Manager from North Texas. So tonight we're going to look briefly at IA privileges and limitations, the duration of your IA initial and renewal requirements. We're going to look at what does actively engaged mean. We're going to look at the 5 renewal activities that are required each year. We'll look at equipment, facilities, and data. Then we're going to show you how to find IA renewal courses on our website, FAAsafety.gov. We're going to look at what constitutes eligible training for IA renewal. And we're going to show you how to enter eligible training on FAAsafety.gov. Excuse me. And lastly, we're going to go through the renewal process using the IACRA website. And our objective tonight is to reduce errors in IA renewal applications. So inspections, authorization, privileges, and limitations are covered in 65.95. And it allows you, in addition to A&P privileges, it allows the IA can inspect and approve for return to service, major repairs and alterations. If the work was done according to tech data approved by the administrator, also can perform an annual inspection and or perform or supervise a progressive inspection. Just remember to keep your IA certificate with you while you're exercising the privilege. The duration of an IA. An IA expires on March 31st of each odd numbered year. So for example, 2021, 23, 25, and so on and so forth. It also ceases to be effective whenever any of the following occurs: if your authorization is surrendered, suspended, or revoked, or if the holder fails to meet the renewal requirements of the regulations. And you cannot exercise privileges in year 2 if the renewal requirements of year 1 were not met. So if you didn't meet the requirements in year 1, you will have to take an oral test administered by an FAA ASI and successfully pass that test before you can exercise privileges in year 2. So the bottom line is, don't let anything lapse. And this means in equipment, facilities, data, or the active engagement, or those activities that are required in year 1 and year 2. And we will answer all the questions at the end of the presentation. We'll look at the chat and the Q&A, and we'll answer those.
Here we seem to be getting some comment about the chat not functioning properly. I am getting the questions to the Q&A, but for some reason, I've got
Yeah.
2 or 3 people saying their chat's disabled, so I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Yeah, the last one I did the same thing. I think it must be a glitch with our system, because there's no way. Okay, I think I just fixed it. So I think the chat should be working now.
Okay, well, maybe somebody will throw us a chat on Teams. There it goes.
All right.
Yeah,
Good.
everybody's good. What did you do by the way?
If you open up the chat box, there's the 3 little dots, and you click on that, and then you give them permission to chat with everyone.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
so we're good. So the bottom line is, don't let anything lapse. So these are the initial application requirements. You must hold an A&P for at least 3 years. You have to be actively engaged for the 2 years prior to applying. And it has to be on certificated aircraft only, not military aircraft. You have to have a fixed base of operations. You have to have the equipment, the facilities, and the inspection data. And then you will need to pass the written test, which is 50 questions. There's a 3-hour limit, and the minimum passing score is 70%. And you have to wait 90 days to retake that test if you fail. An IA certificate is good for 2 years, and renewal occurs in March of odd years. The last renewal we had was March of 2021. Next renewal is this coming March. And you must show evidence in March of odd years that you met all the criteria. And the application, the FAA Form 8610-1 is used. And if you apply on IACRA, the website is actually completing that application as you're filling it out. And IACRA stands for the Integrated Airman Certification and Rating System. And mail is another possible option with the paper copy. And I believe each FSDO has their own policy on that, but I'm pretty sure San Antonio is preferring applicants to use IACRA. So the renewal criteria is found in 6593, but you still have to meet the requirements of 6591C 1 through 4. And that is, you had to have been actively engaged for that 2-year period, the fixed base of operations, the equipment, the facilities, inspection data. And 6593A 1 through 5, those are the renewal activities in year 1 and year 2 that are required. And we're going to cover each of these in a little more detail. So what is actively engaged? This is the textbook answer out of our guidance. Inspect, overhaul, repair, preserve, or replace parts on aircraft, or who supervise those activities. And you will provide evidence showing performance or supervision of aircraft maintenance. This could consist of return to service documents and maintenance record entries. The ASI reviewing your application will could look at the quantity of maintenance activity And that can demonstrate if you were actively engaged. Again, this is only activities that were on certificated aircraft, not military aircraft. Equipment. Some examples of the equipment you should have are the basic hand tools, compression testers, magneto timing lights, devices to determine control surface travels, cable tensions, and so on and so forth. As far as facilities, you have to have facilities that provide environmental protection of the aircraft, power plant, propeller, or the appliance that's being inspected. Now, the fixed base of operations is the place that you can be located at during the normal work week. And this could be your home with inspections done at a hangar elsewhere. It does not have to be, your FBO doesn't have to be where you're exercising your IA. The technical data, the evidence of required technical data. It can come through showing access to our website. You'll need to be able to access airworthiness directives, advisory circulars, type certificate data sheets, specifications, regulations, and the aircraft manufacturer's manuals, airworthiness limitations, ICAs, service bulletins, because some ADs reference a service bulletin. And once an AD references a service bulletin, it becomes mandatory. Now, the reason you have to have data, some might say, well, why do I have to have data? Well, because the performance rules for inspection, Part 43.15, states that you are to determine the aircraft and portions meets all applicable airworthiness requirements. And if you're inspecting an aircraft operating under Part 125, 135, or 91.409E inspection program, then you conduct the inspection in accordance with that inspection program. And 43.15 gives additional rules for rotorcraft. It specifically says you'll follow the maintenance manual and the ICA and inspect the drive shaft's main rotor and transmission gearbox. Now, for an annual and 100-hour inspection, it states you shall use the checklist, and you shall use a checklist, and it will include the scope and detail of Part 43, Appendix D. And there's also ADs, airworthiness limitations, and life-limited parts. So all these go into ensuring that the aircraft meets all airworthiness requirements. So the activities for renewal are covered in 65.93A, 1 through 5. Here's a chart that kind of shows that. So in year 1, April 1st, 2021 to March 31st of 2022, you should have one of those 5 activities: 4 annual inspections, 8 major repairs or alterations, 1 progressive inspection, or 8 hours of IA instruction or training, or an oral test by an FAA inspector. Now, the oral test is usually used or only used if one of those other criteria are not met. And those same requirements are required in year 2 And I've gotten a lot of questions because the regulation is kind of confusing on this part, but the regulation does not require one annual to be performed in each quarter, each 90-day period. But you don't have to be spread out across the whole year. And I can see where people could get confused by that. Renewal activities. Here's a couple examples. Let's say in year one, an IA did 4 annual inspections, and in year 2, the IA had 8 hours of eligible IA training. And in this case, the requirement for renewal has been met. In our second example, in year 1, the IA had 8 hours of authorized IA training. And in year 2, the IA did 3 annuals and 2 major alterations. And in this case, the requirement is not met in year 2. You cannot combine those activities. It's just the way the regulation was written and the way it's been interpreted. Just a reminder, if you're working at a repair station, the credit for a renewal activity is only for those aircraft returned to service under your IA, not by the repair station. So when you submit your supporting documentation, keep that in mind. And here's an example of a log entry. Annual inspection was signed off using the repair station number, and that can't be counted. So what is eligible training? Training course listed on FAAsafety.gov on our IA renewal course list, or maintenance related training provided by manufacturers on their respective type certificate, STC, TSO, or PMA product. And in those cases, no course number is required. It must be technical and or safety informative, however, and they must provide you with a certificate of training. Another type of eligible training is FAST Team or Office Manager IA Renewal Training Event. This is through your FSDO. And lastly, FAA Academy courses. These are maintenance related courses down in Oklahoma City. So where do you find IA training for renewal? It's very easy. Just go on FAAsafety.gov, create an account. And the email that you enter there is what we use to issue credit. Once you have an account, go to the maintenance hangar tab and select IA renewal course list. And then click the blue hyperlink. And I think you have to make a couple clicks to actually get to the list, but that second hyperlink will take you directly to the PDF listing of all the courses. Here's a snippet of the actual list. Now you'll notice a lot of those, the first ones listed are FAST Team courses, and the blue hyperlink over there will take you directly to that course if you click on it. It also shows the course duration and how many IA credit hours you will get. it's important that you don't pick a course that's decommissioned or has an expiration date.
Gary, I have a comment to make on the IA renewal course listing.
Go ahead, Daryl.
As you well know, it was
I think we lost you, Daryl.
I'm sorry, that this course listing are for approved courses, not so much for the ALC courses, but for all of them in general. Were turned over to AFS 300 almost 18 months ago. And you may run into a course that's showing as expired, but the memorandum that 300 put out said that all existing courses that have that were previously approved prior to the transfer are still effective. So I would recommend that if you run across one that shows that it's expired, to give Gary or myself or one of the FAA officers a call to see if it's still valid for use. That we're just kind of in an interim period of transition, and they haven't been able to get all of the renewals out to date.
All right, thanks, Daryl. And even your local IA refresher seminar will probably be on the list, and it will have a number. And that's the one that was done in the San Antonio district the last time. There's the number. Now, if you click one of the hyperlinks, it will take you to the course. Make sure you're logged in and not just in the previewing mode, as it says there, if you want to take the course and get credit, because you can go through it in just preview mode, but you won't get credit until you're actually logged in. So just be aware of that. And under the maintenance hangar, under the My AMT tab, that's where all your training is tracked. For example, the bronze training is 12 hours of training, silver is 40, and gold is achieved when you have 80 hours plus 3 college credit hours. And to claim your award, don't forget to claim it. And in the month of January, a button becomes active on the website, and you click on there and claim any award that you qualify for. Now, once you take some courses off that list, you're going to want to have evidence of the training for your IA renewal. And so you do that by going in under the training history tab. Make sure you pick the right year, and you can actually print those out. And that can be part of your evidence. And there's the course numbers. Make sure it's listed as an IA renewal course. Now, recently, a new way to get training is through a website called Social Flight. It's very difficult to send PowerPoints and videos using our FAA system because of the size of the servers and everything. So FAA has collaborated with this private company called Social Flight, and now we can actually put our webinars, our seminars, videos on this website. And actually, you'll see on this screenshot, this webinar tonight was listed on Social Flight, IA renewal requirements. And you can go on there and watch a video, and each of them have a short test afterwards. I think most of them are a 10-question test. And take the test, and you will get IA AMT or Wings credit, depending on what the particular course provides. So that's another good way to get training. And I've submitted, I think, about 4 courses now that we've done webinars and recorded. And so they should be showing up on this site pretty soon, I hope. So you can get credit that way as well. And going back, don't be fearful of the test, because if you pick the wrong answer, it gives you a hint that pretty much tells you the right answer. So you can't fail. Eventually you will get there. Now, what about industry training or an IA refresher seminar? Here's an example of a certificate of training that you might receive from one of those events. Then the next few slides, we're going to cover how you enter this industry training or training from an IA refresher seminar into your FAAsafety.gov account for AMT credit. Now, you don't have to enter it into FAAsafety.gov for the IA credit. You can just submit this certificate with your application for that. But if you want it to apply for your AMT credit, we're going to show you how to upload that. Here's a sample of a certificate of training. I did on March 30th, I did a 4-hour IA renewal or refresher training, and issued, I think, 50 or 60 certificates of training. Make sure they're signed. They have to be signed. So to enter eligible training, you click the Enter Eligible Training tab in the maintenance hangar. And it's pretty self-explanatory. You just enter all the information and submit. So here's the part we all logged on for: where and how to renew my IA. And so now that you've gathered up all your evidence and you've got your places where you work to show your activities, you can start the process. So the basic process is you're going to go create an account in the FAA website, IACRA. You're going to review and acknowledge the Privacy Act and the Pilot's Bill of Rights. You're going to fill out all the required information, attach your supporting documents, and then sign and submit your application. So we're going to look at that process step by step. And these next slides came from AFS 300, the maintenance division's guide that they put out on this. So here is IACRA.faa.gov, the home page. On the left are various functions. On the right is where you would log in or register to create an account. So if it's your first time, you'll click register. And you want to check the applicant box. Agree to the terms of service and continue. And then you'll start filling out the information. And anytime you see the blue question mark, if you click on that, it tells you, gives you some information about that block. And you want to use your name as it appears on your FAA issued certificate. And please enter a valid email address, because that's what IACRA is going to use to notify you of the status of your application. And if you miss information here, you will get an error message. So you're going to make up a security question and an answer. Make up a username and password, and then click register. And notice the Privacy Act statement is down at the bottom. So after registering, IACRA is going to display your FTN, FAA tracking number. This is very important. The inspectors have told me that when somebody has a problem, they call into the FSDO, and without this FTN number, it's sometimes hard to look up their application, I guess. So just make sure you write this down, even send a text message of it to yourself. Okay, so now you've completed creation of your IACRA account. Now you can go back in, just log in and start your application. You have to accept the terms of service again. Your user information will be shown in the upper left-hand corner. And to begin an inspection authorization renewal package, select the Start Inspection Authorization Renewal button. Now notice along the top are status bars 1 through 6. Those are the 6 sections of the application. And if there's a red X, it means that particular section is not complete. So start filling in your personal information. And required fields are marked with the asterisk. You have to enter information there. It won't let you proceed. Once you enter the information, click Next. And so this corresponds to blocks 1 through 4 on the actual 8610-1. So notice that this section 1 personal information now has a green check mark. So that means everything is complete there. Now we're in section 2, certificate sought. And this stuff will be pre-filled. You won't be able to do anything with this because when you started, you picked inspection authorization. Now we are in the section 3, basis of renewal. And they asked the question, was your inspection authorization issued within 90 days of March 31st? So you'll answer yes or no. You'll see why on the next slide. The second section addresses the basis of the inspection authorization renewal. IACRA has been programmed to accept the appropriate quantities of annual inspections, major repairs and alterations, and progressive inspections. There's no need to list all the activities you did, just the ones you're using for renewal. And you have to meet the requirement in both the first year and second year. There's also a space for the oral test. And if you do receive an oral test from an ASI, make sure you get a letter signed by the ASI saying that he administered the test in accordance with the regulation and you successfully passed it. This will be your evidence. So recency of issuance, there is a couple exceptions if you just got your IA. Number one is the IA was issued less than 90 days before the expiration date of March 31st of an odd year. And then it says you don't have to comply with the renewal activity for that quarter. So an example of that would be you got your IA on January 15th, 2023, which is in the second year of the IA period. So you were not an IA in the first year of the period. Since you were only an IA for 3 months of the second year, you don't need to show renewal activities in block 10. Kind of makes sense, can get kind of confusing. Now, this example goes along with item number 2. If an IA was issued less than 90 days before March 31st of the first year, an even year, then you need not comply with those activities for the first year. So an example is you got your IA in February of 2022, which is towards the end of the first year of the period. So your renewal application does not need to show renewal activities in block 10 for that first year because you only had it for a short period of time. Now, if you're in this situation, I recommend you contact your FSDO, talk to an airworthiness inspector, and discuss this, but that's the way the regulation is written. So now we are up to the point where you're going to attach supporting documents. And it will accept JPEGs, TIFFs, PNGs, and PDFs. Just like any other website you've used, you just click upload, and then you browse to find your file and then upload it. And once you upload it, you can see here in the blue box, it says training certificate TIFF has been loaded. Go ahead and click view. Make sure you can read the document that you uploaded, because if you can't read it, the ASI reviewing your application won't be able to read it either. And it's going to slow down your application. Here's an example of a certificate that you might attach. And these are the things that are required on a certificate. Should have the training provider's name, the course title, course acceptance number, if there is one, your name, the date, the training hours of the course. It might be a 40-hour course, but only 8 hours are creditable for IA. And the course provider's point of contact and their signature and title. And what you just filled out is the corresponds to block 10 of form 8610-1. And this is the basis for renewal. That's what we just completed. And that is filling out this part of the application, showing the one of 5 activities in each year. So now you can see section 3 has a green check mark. Now we're moving on to section 4, maintenance activity. This is where you'll add your maintenance activities. Were you actively engaged? That's the question that's being answered here. So you'll enter the maintenance activities for the last 2 years. Pretty self-explanatory. After you enter everything, you're going to click next. And this corresponds to block 11, the actively engaged section of the form. Okay, so now maintenance activity, section 4 has a green check mark, and we are in the section 5 supplemental data section. Make sure you pick the correct FSDO for where you're located. So there's a drop down menu. Make sure you pick the right FSDO. So if you don't, it's going to delay the process. And now you're going to answer these questions. Now the program is, the system is programmed so that if you answer something in the wrong way, in other words, it's going to knock you out of qualification for renewal, it will give you this pop-up. It'll tell you you have a problem with this question. So you still need to answer honestly. And if your honest answers don't pass muster in this section, then you're probably not eligible for renewal, because all of these things are required. After you answer all the questions, click Next, and supplemental data will have a green check mark. This corresponds to block 5 through 9 of the form. Next, you're going to review the PBR, the Privacy Act, and review your application and sign it. After you look at the Pilot's Bill of Rights, you're going to click Close. And you do have to click the hyperlink to sign acknowledgement of the Pilot's Bill of Rights. Then you're going to review the Privacy Act. After you review that, you'll close it. Then you need to review your application. After you review the application, click Close. It's going to generate an actual copy of the 8610. And you are at the point where you're going to sign and submit your application. And if you did see where there was some corrections needed as you do your review, make sure you make those corrections. You can click the tabs at the top to get to that section, or you can use the previous or next button at the bottom of the page. But if it's all good, then you're going to click Sign and Submit. Then you're going to have to click the hyperlink to actually sign it. After you sign it, you're going to see this screen that it has been submitted to the FSDO you selected. There's your application ID. I would probably write that down as well. And you get another opportunity to review it. And here's the actual form, signed and date stamped. As soon as the FAA office processes your renewal package, the applicant will receive an email telling you that it's been processed and that a renewal letter is now available for you to download and print. And that email message will have a link to the IACRA homepage. So make sure you check your spam folders and make sure that email isn't stuck in your spam folder. Now, after you get the email saying it's ready to print your renewal letter, go back in. You'll find your existing application and there's a button for print renewal letter. And there's no need to obtain an updated IA certificate because the renewal letter with your original serves this purpose. And you can save or print your renewal letter. So that concludes how you actually go in and apply for renewal. Today, we looked at IA privileges and limitations, just a brief review. We looked at the IA duration. We looked at what the criteria are for the initial and renewal. We looked at the textbook meaning of actively engaged. Then we reviewed the 5 activities, 1 of 5 that are required in each year. We also reviewed that the regulation requires you to have the equipment, the facilities, and the data. And then we looked on FAAsafety.gov and saw how to get the IA renewal course list. We also saw that you can go on Social Flight and pick courses from there, and some of them have credit as well. We looked at how to enter eligible training on FAAsafety.gov that will go towards your AMT award. And then last, we looked at how to actually renew your IA using the IACRA system. So our website, the 2 primary links are the maintenance hangar for technicians and the pilots tab for pilots. Best way to learn about those programs are clicking the hyperlink tutorials. And there is our email information if you want to ask questions later, if you have a question. And Daryl, what's in the chat and the Q&A?
All right, great presentation, Gary. I even learned a few things about IACRA. I have a question to start off this. Does IACRA have, you talked about filling everything that was filled out in that IACRA platform was actually getting answers to populate the 8610-1. Does IACRA give you the opportunity to actually download an 8610-1 form after it's completed? Do you know?
I believe, yeah, I think that we did see one screen where it shows your completed form, but I actually don't know if you can print that out or not.
Well,
That's
just a
good
question. Yeah, not a good question. I didn't mean to put you on the spot because I don't know the answer myself, but we do have a couple of questions that came in. It looks like we've got a couple more that have come up since you've completed, but Mr. Gilder Master wanted to know if the Social Flight platform that you were talking about earlier, I know you were basically a beta user of that. He wants to know, how do you know that the courses that are listed on Social Flight actually have IA approval?
When you get to the website, after you create your account, which is just like any other website, you create an account, they give you a little quiz of real easy stuff just to make sure the system's working. And then once you have that and you get to the main screen, on the top of the main screen over to the right, there's a button that says FAA IAAMT wings credits. And if you click on that, there's a list of courses on Social Flight that have credits.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answers Mr. Gilder Master's question. I also have one from Mr. Dyson in the chat, came up in the chat. He said he's actually carrying a letter of authorization from last year's renewal. I guess he got it through IACRA. And he says, will we get a simulator at the next renewal? And if that continues, will our 8310-5 ever be endorsed again? I don't see where, if it's been, basically we've the 8310-5 endorsement was issued under the old processes and procedures that we utilized when you actually went into the office with this new IACRA process. No, your 8310-5 will probably never be endorsed again unless you lose it. Then you probably will go into the office and request a replacement certificate, but that's to the best of my knowledge. Gary, do you have any further input from Mr. Dyson?
No, that's probably, once they started this process and it has been working so well, I doubt they'll go back to the old system. So I think you're correct on that, Daryl.
Okay, and then we have one from Mr. Williams, says the letter of renewal eliminates having the yellow eye certificate signed, and that's correct, Mr. Williams. We just addressed that basically with Mr. Dyson's question. So that as long as you get that IACRA letter of renewal, you do know you're good to go. If you have the yellow eye certificate signed, or the yellow eye certificate 8310-5, keep it. It's still usable. It's just that it won't be endorsed any longer. We have someone here from Gilbert. Mr. Gilbert says, does a 40-hour general familiarization course from an airline count as eligible training towards renewal? Do you want me to answer that, or do you have an answer for it?
Go ahead, Daryl.
Okay, a general familiarization course from an airline may or may not be creditable towards IA renewal, but generally and almost inevitably it is determined, if we look at it, that it is not. Anything that an airline uses that's a general familiarization course related to their policies, procedures, or things that they use to run their business with, we don't count. Remember, IA renewal credit courses are for actual activities that relate to maintenance training, or believe it or not, even some human factors courses that we have in our course catalog are credible for IA renewal. But to answer your question, Mr. Gilbert, no, they will not.
Okay.
And that's all the questions I have, Gary. I'll leave it to you to wrap it up, sir.
All right. Appreciate the help tonight. Appreciate everybody attending. And just your presence here shows that you're, really concerned about doing everything correctly. So we do appreciate that. And with that, until next time, I will end the presentation and hope to see you at the next webinar or seminar.
Good night, everyone.